It was an ordinary day at Forrester Creations, at least in terms of the bustling activity that filled every corner of the iconic fashion house. Yet, in Steffy Forrester's office, the air seemed thicker than usual as she studied the latest designs for the upcoming collection. Her mind, though, wasn't on the dresses or the fabrics spread out before her. It was distracted, a restless feeling lurking just beneath her usual confident exterior. Steffy couldn't shake the nagging sensation that something was brewing, though she couldn't yet put her finger on what it was. She had learned over the years to trust her instincts that had gotten her through corporate battles, family feuds, and heartbreaks alike. But today, the sense of impending conflict was sharper, as if the storm was already on the horizon. Her phone buzzed, snapping her out of her thoughts. It was a message from Carter Walton, Forrester Creations' trusted legal counsel and a man who had grown to be both ally and confidant to Steffy over the years. "Carter, we need to talk. Urgent. Meet me in the boardroom." The message didn't explain much, but Carter's no-nonsense attitude meant it had to be important. With a sigh, Steffy gathered her thoughts, pushed back from her desk, and headed to the boardroom. The heels of her designer shoes clicked purposefully on the polished floors, signaling her approach. When she arrived, the door was slightly ajar, and she could hear voices inside. Pushing the door open, she was greeted by the sight of Carter standing at the head of the conference table, his expression a mix of excitement and anticipation. His posture was tense, which was unusual for someone so typically composed. Sitting beside him, however, was someone Steffy hadn't expected to see, Ivy Forrester. Steffy's breath hitched at the sight of her cousin, the dark-haired beauty who had once been a prominent figure at Forrester Creations, before leaving for Australia to pursue her own path in the world of jewelry design. Ivy's return was enough of a surprise, but it was the figure next to her that truly left Steffy speechless. A tall, striking woman with platinum blonde hair and piercing blue eyes. Someone who Steffy vaguely recognized, but couldn't immediately place. Carter looked up from his conversation with Ivy, a wide grin spreading across his face when he saw Steffy. "Steffy, you're here. Good timing," Carter said, stepping forward. "I'd like you to meet Electra Forrester. She's a distant relative, and she's been making waves in the European fashion circuit with her jewelry designs." Electra smiled warmly, extending a hand to Steffy. Her gaze was steady, assessing, as if she were sizing up her new competition, even as they exchanged pleasantries. Steffy hesitated for a moment before taking her hand. "Nice to meet you," she replied, her voice polite but cautious. Something about Electra's presence unsettled her, though she couldn't quite place why. Carter didn't seem to notice Steffy's wariness as he continued with an enthusiastic energy. "I've been in talks with Ivy and Electra for the past few weeks, and we've come up with an exciting proposal. They want to pitch a new jewelry line, and I think it could be a great addition to Forrester Creations." Steffy blinked, her mind racing. This was the news that had been bubbling beneath the surface, the storm she had sensed on the horizon. A jewelry line? From Ivy and Electra. Without consulting her, she struggled to keep her cool as her mind processed the situation. "I see," Steffy said slowly, her tone measured. "And when exactly were you planning to tell me about this?" Carter's smile faltered, just for a second, before he recovered. "I wanted to get everything lined up before bringing it to you. Ivy's been working on some incredible designs, and Electra's vision is, well, unique. This could be huge for Forrester." Steffy's jaw tightened. Huge for Forrester, or huge for Ivy and Electra? The question hung in the air, heavy with the unspoken tension that had suddenly filled the room. Ivy shifted in her seat, her eyes narrowing slightly as she glanced at Steffy. It was clear that old rivalries were far from forgotten. "We're all Forrester, Steffy," Ivy interjected smoothly, her Australian accent cutting through the tension. "This isn't about competition. It's about expanding the brand, bringing something fresh to the table." Steffy's eyes flicked toward her cousin. Ivy's confidence, once something Steffy admired, now felt like a challenge. She remembered all too well the tension that had existed between them in the past. Over Liam, over their places in the company, over family loyalty. And now Ivy was back, with someone new by her side, proposing a project that could potentially eclipse Steffi's own contributions to Forrester Creations. Steffi blinked, her mind racing. This was the news that had been bubbling beneath the surface, the storm she had sensed on the horizon, a jewelry line from Ivy and Electra. Without consulting her, she struggled to keep her cool as her mind processed the situation. "I see," Steffi said slowly, her tone measured. "And when exactly were you planning to tell me about this?" Carter's smile faltered, just for a second, before he recovered. "I wanted to get everything lined up before bringing it to you. Ivy's been working on some incredible designs, and Electra's vision is, well, unique. This could be huge for Forrester." Steffi's jaw tightened. Huge for Forrester or huge for Ivy and Electra? The question hung in the air, heavy with the unspoken tension that had suddenly filled the room. Ivy shifted in her seat, her eyes narrowing slightly as she glanced at Steffi. It was clear that old rivalries were far from forgotten. "We're all Forrester, Steffi," Ivy interjected smoothly, her Australian accent cutting through the tension. "This isn't about competition. It's about expanding the brand, bringing something fresh to the table." Steffi's eyes flicked toward her cousin. Ivy's confidence, once something Steffi admired, now felt like a challenge. She remembered all too well the tension that had existed between them in the past. Over Liam, over their places in the company, over family loyalty. And now Ivy was back, with someone new by her side, proposing a project that could potentially eclipse Steffi's own contributions to Forrester Creations. Carter cleared his throat, clearly sensing the shift in the room. Ivy's right. This isn't about stepping on anyone's toes. We're a family, and I think this collaboration could elevate the brand in a way we haven't seen before. Steffi crossed her arms over her chest, her stance defensive. "And you didn't think it was important to consult with me before moving forward with this? I'm the CEO, Carter. This is my company." "I know," Carter said quickly, "but you've been so busy with the latest collection, and I didn't want to add to your plate until I had something concrete to show you. I'm telling you now because I believe in this project, and I think you will too once you hear more about it." Steffi glanced at Electra, who had remained quiet throughout the exchange, watching intently. There was something about her that felt calculated, as if she were deliberately staying silent, waiting for the right moment to speak. The silence stretched uncomfortably as Steffi weighed her options. She didn't like being blindsided, especially not by someone as close to her as Carter. He had always been someone she could trust, someone who understood the intricacies of running Forrester Creations. But this felt like a betrayal, even if it wasn't meant that way. "All right," Steffi said finally, her voice cool. "I'll listen to the pitch, but let's be clear, I have the final say. This is my decision." Carter nodded, relief washing over his face. "Of course, we wouldn't have it any other way." 2 days later, the boardroom was set for the pitch. Steffi arrived early, determined to be in control of the situation from the very beginning. She had spent the last 48 hours doing her homework, researching Ivy's latest designs and Electra's work in Europe. What she found had impressed her, but it also made her wary. Electra's pieces were bold, avant-garde, and distinctly different from anything Forrester Creations had ever produced. They were beautiful, yes, but also divisive. Some critics had called them groundbreaking, while others labeled them as pretentious and unwearable. As Steffi stood by the window, looking out over the Los Angeles skyline, the door behind her opened. She turned to see Carter, Ivy, and Electra enter, followed by a few members of the design team who had been briefed on the project. "Steffi." Carter greeted her with a nod, his tone professional. "Carter," she replied, equally businesslike. The room filled with tension as Ivy and Electra took their seats, setting up a sleek black portfolio on the table. Electra remained composed, her icy blue eyes scanning the room as if she were taking in every detail. Ivy, on the other hand, seemed eager, her fingers tapping nervously on the table as she prepared for the presentation. Carter began. "Thank you all for being here today. As you know, we're here to discuss a potential new jewelry line that Ivy and Electra have been working on. This line has the potential to be something truly unique for Forrester Creations, a blend of tradition and innovation." Ivy took over, her voice steady, as she spoke about the inspiration behind the collection. "We're calling it Forrester Legacy. It's a tribute to our family's history, but with a modern twist. Each piece is designed to reflect the boldness and elegance of Forrester, while also pushing the boundaries of what jewelry can be. We want to create pieces that make a statement, not just accessories, but works of art." Electra chimed in, her voice soft but commanding. "The pieces are unconventional, yes, but they speak to the future. Forrester Creations is known for setting trends, not following them. This line will do just that." Steffi listened intently, her expression unreadable. The designs Ivy and Electra unveiled were striking, to say the least. Rings, necklaces, and bracelets with intricate details, geometric shapes, and a mix of metals and gemstones that shimmered in the presentation slides. Some pieces were subtle, while others were audacious, verging on the theatrical. As the presentation went on, Steffi couldn't deny the talent in front of her. The designs were stunning, and there was no doubt that they would catch the attention of the fashion world. But there was something else at play here, something deeper than just the jewelry itself. This wasn't just about expanding the brand. It was about power, about control, and about family dynamics that had never truly been resolved. When the presentation concluded, Carter turned to Steffi expectantly. "So, what do you think?" Steffi was silent for a long moment, her eyes fixed on the designs in front of her. She could feel Ivy's and Electra's gazes on her, waiting, anticipating her response. Finally, she spoke, her tone measured. "The designs are beautiful. There's no denying that. But I'm not convinced that this is the right direction for Forrester Creations." Ivy's eyes widened in surprise. "What do you mean?" Steffi leaned forward, her gaze locking onto Ivy's. Forrester Creations has built its reputation on timeless elegance, on creating pieces that women want to wear, not just admire from a distance. Some of these designs, they're too bold, too out there. I'm not sure our customers will respond to this. Electra's voice cut through the room, sharp and direct. "Perhaps it's time to evolve, Steffi. Fashion isn't static. It's about pushing boundaries, about challenging the norm. If Forrester Creations wants to stay relevant, it needs to adapt." Steffi's eyes flicked toward Electra, her irritation rising. "We've been adapting just fine without alienating our core customers. There's a difference between being innovative and being reckless." Electra raised an eyebrow, her posture unbothered by Steffi's critique. "Reckless? I wouldn't call it reckless. I'd call it visionary. And I'd call it a gamble." Steffi shot back. "A gamble that could backfire if we're not careful." Carter stepped in, trying to diffuse the tension. "Let's not jump to conclusions. This is just the beginning of the discussion. We can refine the designs, find a balance that works for everyone." But Steffi wasn't ready to let it go. The proposal had caught her off guard, and the underlying dynamics between Ivy, Electra, and herself were making it difficult to think clearly. This wasn't just about jewelry. This was about her place in the company, her authority, and her legacy. "I need time to think about this," Steffi said finally, standing up from the table. "We'll continue this discussion once I've had a chance to review everything." Without waiting for a response, she turned and left the room, her mind swirling with conflicting thoughts and emotions. The storm she had sensed was no longer on the horizon. It was here, and Steffi knew it was only a matter of time before it erupted into something far bigger than any of them had anticipated. Back in her office, Steffi paced restlessly, her mind racing with the events of the past hour. She had expected a challenge from Ivy, but Electra's presence had thrown her off balance. There was something about Electra, the way she carried herself, the subtle yet unmistakable confidence, that unnerved Steffi. And then there was Carter. Steffi trusted Carter, or at least she had up until this point. He had always been loyal, always had her back. But now she wasn't so sure. He had blindsided her with this proposal, and it made her wonder if she could still rely on him the way she always had. Had he changed? Or had the dynamics at Forrester Creations changed without her realizing it? A knock on her door pulled Steffi from her thoughts. She turned to see Ridge, her father, standing in the doorway. His expression was calm, but there was a hint of concern in his eyes. "Hey," Ridge said softly, stepping into the office. Carter told me about the pitch. How are you holding up? Steffi let out a long breath, her tension easing slightly at the sight of her father. Ridge had always been her rock, the one person she could rely on no matter what. I don't know, Dad, Steffi admitted, sinking into the chair behind her desk. This whole thing, it feels off. I don't like the way Carter went behind my back, and I definitely don't like Electra's attitude. Ridge nodded, his brow furrowing in thought. Electra's a wild card, no doubt about it. But Carter, well, he's always had a good head on his shoulders. Maybe he really does believe in this project. That's what scares me, Steffi said, her voice tinged with frustration. He didn't even come to me first. He just assumed I'd go along with it. And Ivy, I don't know. She's always been competitive, but this feels different, like she's trying to prove something. Ridge crossed his arms, leaning against the desk. Ivy's always wanted to make her mark at Forrester. Maybe this is her way of doing that. Steffi shook her head. It's not just about Ivy. It's about me too. I'm the CEO, Dad. I'm supposed to be the one making decisions, not reacting to everyone else's. But right now, it feels like I'm losing control. Ridge sighed, his eyes softening as he looked at his daughter. Steffi, you're not losing control. You're just facing a new challenge, and that's okay. You've always been a fighter, and you've always come out on top. This is no different. Steffi nodded slowly, her father's words offering some comfort. But deep down, she knew that this was different. This wasn't just about business. It was about family, loyalty, and power. And as much as she wanted to believe that she could handle it, she couldn't shake the feeling that the storm was far from over. Chapter 4, The Showdown. Days passed, and the tension at Forrester Creations only continued to build. Steffi kept herself busy with meetings, design reviews, and overseeing the latest collection. But the looming decision about Ivy and Electra's jewelry line remained at the forefront of her mind. Finally, after much deliberation, she called a meeting with Carter, Ivy, and Electra in her office. The time had come to settle this once and for all. When they arrived, Steffi was already seated behind her desk, her posture commanding. Carter stood off to the side, looking slightly apprehensive, while Ivy and Electra sat opposite Steffi, their expressions unreadable. I've had time to think about the proposal, Steffi began, her voice steady. And while I appreciate the work you've both put into this, I'm still not convinced it's the right fit for Forrester Creations. Ivy's eyes widened, a flicker of anger crossing her face. You're rejecting it, just like that? I'm not rejecting it outright, Steffi clarified. I'm saying it needs more work. Some of the designs are too out there, too risky. I'm not willing to gamble with Forrester's reputation. Electra, who had remained quiet until now, finally spoke up, her voice calm, but cutting. Maybe the problem isn't the design, Steffi. Maybe the problem is that you're afraid of change. Steffi's eyes narrowed, her irritation rising. Afraid of change. I've been at the forefront of every major innovation at Forrester Creations for years. This isn't about being afraid. It's about being smart. Electra's gaze remained steady, her tone unbothered. Smart or controlling? The words hit Steffi like a slap in the face. Controlling. The accusation stung, not because it was entirely untrue, but because it echoed the doubts that had been creeping into her mind ever since the proposal was brought to her. Was she being too controlling? Too cautious? Was she holding on too tightly to the reins of the company, afraid to let anyone else take the lead? Before she could respond, Ivy interjected, her voice sharp. This is exactly why we didn't come to you sooner, Steffi. You always have to be in control, always have to have the final say. This isn't just your company, it's all of ours, and we deserve a chance to contribute. Steffi's jaw tightened, her anger flaring. I am the CEO, Ivy. That means I make the decisions. And if you don't like that, maybe you should consider whether you still want to be part of this company. The room fell silent, the weight of Steffi's words hanging in the air. Ivy's face hardened, her eyes flashing with fury, but she didn't respond. After a long, tense pause, Carter finally spoke, his voice gentle but firm. This isn't getting us anywhere. We need to find a way to work together, not tear each other apart. Forrester Creations is built on family, on unity. Let's not lose sight of that. Steffy's gaze softened slightly, but her resolve remained firm. She knew that Carter was right, but she also knew that she couldn't let the situation spiral out of control. "I'll consider your feedback," Steffy said finally, her tone more measured. "But the final decision is mine, and I'll do what's best for Forrester Creations." As they worked together, Steffy found herself grudgingly admiring Electra's determination and Ivy's passion for the project. Despite their differences, there was no denying that they were both talented, and their contributions could bring something new and exciting to Forrester Creations. Eventually, they reached a point where Steffy felt confident in moving forward with the line. It wasn't exactly what Ivy and Electra had initially envisioned, but it was a compromise that everyone could live with. When the final designs were presented to the board, the reaction was overwhelmingly positive. The Forrester Legacy collection was poised to be a hit, blending the boldness of Electra's avant-garde style with the timeless elegance that Forrester Creations was known for. For the first time in weeks, Steffy felt a sense of relief. The storm had passed, and though there were still lingering tensions, she knew that they had all come out of it stronger, both as individuals and as a company. But as she looked at the finished collection, Steffy couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the beginning. The dynamics at Forrester Creations were shifting, and she would need to be ready for whatever came next. As she stood in her office, gazing out over the Los Angeles skyline, Steffy knew one thing for certain. The future of Forrester Creations was brighter than ever, but it wouldn't come without its challenges, and she was ready to face them head-on.